All right, welcome to the Action Shooting Show. Sponsored by Primer & Co. as always. So I got my Primer & Co. shirt on. Check them out at primerandco.com. So we're going to get right into this. If you notice, we have a new face here. This is Sean Murphy. Sean, you want to explain or kind of give yourself a quick intro as to what you do?
Sure. So, Sean Murphy, my day job, I work for Night Force, so I get to help sell some scopes, get to play with some cool stuff. But been a competitive shooter for 15, 16 years now. Started with IDPA, USPSA 3-gun, and kind of evolved. Through Night Force, I've been able to shoot a lot of different long range stuff and tend to shoot a lot of that. From PRS to team sniper stuff, field type shooting. I've done some F class, done a little bit of everything. And then, 2018, old Bruce Perry, he held his first run and gun match down here in Georgia. I actually started shooting matches at some of Bruce Perry's old action pistol matches at the same club, Riverbend, that he does his running gun at. So it's kind of like it's fun to reconnect, see some old faces, and I kind of set the hook in running gun. So I've done 10, 12 of them now over the last couple of years, but I enjoy it. It gets to test the marksmanship, competitive shooting side, and it also has a lot of, as we'll talk about for Legion match, engaging the brain on the clock or right before and kind of managing a strategy. So been shooting competitively for quite a while and a lot of different stuff, and kind of ended up long range and the running gun stuff is kind of what I've been focused on the last couple of years.
And and I forgot to say, this is going to be a Legion after action report. So kind of wrap up on that. And I think, is it safe to say, have you noticed people who shoot run and gun, a lot of them that do well tend to be multidisciplinary shooters? I mean, it's hard to think of anyone who doesn't.
It's kind of evolving, I think. When I started, I'll be honest, I've not always been a PT stud by any means. And no, I am way on the other side. I'm a shooter that happens to run because I like to shoot. There are those that are really good runners, but they're starting to figure out how to shoot. So when the people that can really run fast and shoot really well, we're all screwed. But I would say the shooting component, the way the scoring works as a discipline, I would say you can be an okay runner, but if you're a really good shooter, you can make a lot of ground. I kind of fit in that category. Like I can suffer through running enough to where if I can shoot well, so people that have, whether some pistol experience or rifle or both, or multi-gun shooters, they tend to have been exposed to competitive shooting and can quickly adapt on the fly, be like, okay, we're doing this, program the stage in their head real quick and execute really well. With limited information versus somebody that doesn't have any prior experience. It's just like, hey, running gun's new for me. It sounds like fun. I've been a shooter, but not a competitive shooter. I would say anybody that's shot any kind of competition, as in has some mindset for trying to shoot a little faster, a little more accurately, they're already ahead of the curve. So multidiscipline or any discipline really, they do have a leg up on somebody that's just coming into it, or somebody they're really good at running and they kind of know how the gun works, but they don't really know how to the gaming side to it. I would say that competitive shooter would probably do better than somebody who's really good at running that's just getting the gun side figured out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. All right. So for those who haven't shot it or maybe haven't heard it, Legion, this is the correct 5th year, right, Mike? Because you've done all of them. Okay. So this is, I think, the 5th year, and it's a Special Forces benefit. The 5th group out of where's that out of, Mike?
Fort Campbell.
Fort Campbell. So so match flavor wise, it really centers around that. I brought the match book here. One of the cool things is each of the stages that you shoot is kind of a vignette. So you've got a little story about a 5th group Special Forces soldier who was killed in action. And so the stages are based around that, which is really cool. So it's a blind stages. They tell you the story, and it sometimes kind of gives you an idea. It gives you an idea of maybe what you're expecting to see, but but you don't. It's not like you're gonna shoot rifle here and do this, and then you're gonna go here. It's you just kind of go up and maybe got a little bit of idea what's going on. Is that pretty fair to say? So and it very so along with that, there's a lot of mental stuff, as I think Sean already pointed out, a lot of cognitive stuff. They tell you before you go out there, you may see things on the course that are out of place. Maybe you want to write that down or remember it. At the end of stages, they will tell you certain phrases. You may call in an airstrike and they tell you something back. I know from past matches at Legion, there was codes or there was numbers you had to write down that you had to use on a stage later. And so there's a lot of that kind of thing. There's a lot of information being thrown at you. And actually this year they had someone out in the woods with a paintball gun. So as you're running through the course and you're wanting to go fast, but you kind of have to pay attention to your surroundings, be aware, because, at any point someone could pop out and start nailing you with a paintball gun.
Yeah, old Gianni George.
Yep. Yeah, we went to dinner with George and he had way too much fun doing that. So I'm a little worried about him.
Good for him. I think he was the last guy in on the RO day, and I think he earned the opportunity to run around and terrorize everybody. I know I got in character a little bit. We'll get into my dumpster fire of a match. But by the time he's there, I turn the corner after having a bad stage, and he's literally standing in this alleyway of trees with the gun in one hand and just, just kind of like we're swapping some phrases back and forth. It was good, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, a real quick, the match flavor. I guess one other thing that's to note is pistol and rifle. It's not your standard. Typically, it's not your standard like 1 round on steel or 2 rounds anywhere in paper or whatever. Pistol is on most stages 5 hits, and rifle is typically 3 hits. Now, that's not every stage, and they had some smaller targets you only had to have single hits on. But I guess that stemmed from when they were first doing this match. Matt was talking to the Special Forces guys, Matt Stinnett, the match director, and saying, hey, what does it take when you're going in these places to put people down? Because, it's obviously it's not going to just necessarily be 2 in center mass and they just, fall over magically like they do in the movie. So they're like, well, it just depends. Well, he's like, well, give me a general number. And I guess that's what they came out. Rifle, it's 3, and pistol, it usually takes 5. So that's kind of a neat aspect. And if you're too used to just blasting 2 in the A and going on, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, Matt does a good job. I mean, he works with the SF guys too. That's the other thing. Like, Matt does a great job organizing it and setting stages, but he still also has 5th group guys actually help planning and I would say come up with ways to terrorize us, or make it a little more difficult. So, it's not the average match by any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really enjoy the added emphasis on round count and accuracy that comes with this match. Only getting A and C zone hits counting, and then that increased round count. It really makes you accountable for all of those hits that they require.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll go into some of the neat things that Special Forces kind of help bring out this year as we go through the stages. So divisions and distance, they have a 5K and a 10K. 5K has 5 stages, and the 10K adds an extra 2 stages. Now, with the 5K this year, I know I did a little over 4 miles or so. What did you guys have a distance on the 10K?
I was over 7 on mine.
Yeah, it was 7.2. Yeah, I think most people are like 7 1/4. Again, I had a little bit of a disaster of a match, so I was actually a little bit over 8 miles. But it was. I think most people were 7 1/4-ish was the 10K.
Yeah, and there was some, I don't want to say shortcutting. If depending on how things went, you could skip certain sections, so maybe you get a little bit less. But if you've not shot a run and gun, whatever the match director says for distance, you can assume that it's a mile more. So if it's a 5K, you're probably going to be going 4 miles. 10K, I think Heartbreak's 10K last year was 8 miles. So they don't, this is America. We don't do metric well.
Yeah, I think
Heartbreak doesn't care either.
No, they don't. All right, so I don't want to get too into gear, but is there anything you guys want to speak of gear-wise for what you chose for this match? If there's any special considerations, I kind of ran my normal kit. So Sean, anything different you did?
So for this match, so I've put different videos in AARs and some of the stuff I normally run. I like a belt kit and then a light chest rig. Like, it's not really a mag carrier, a bunch of pouches. It's like a Hill People gear. It's more like a backpacking, type rig. For this match with the additional rounds, I plan on a little extra. Actually, this was the first time I ran a Haley strategic micro rig. So had the Kydex, holders, a little more space on the chest, and given, like we were just talking about on distance, I want to carry a little extra water and stuff. So I ran the micro rig and then had their flat pack attached. So it creates, it's not like as bulky and covered up as a plate carrier, but I could still carry, multiple rifle and pistol rounds and a little extra stuff up front, and had a backpack with, but it was a flush, low profile. We did have one section we had to crawl under some barbed wire. Usually there's an obstacle, so I don't like having a big bag. So that was the only thing I did different. But other than that, this is a match to not really try new stuff and take what you know because of the challenges you're going to have to face.
Yeah, and you ran Light Fighter, right?
Correct. Yeah, I ran Light Fighter. Because there's Light Fighter, which is pretty much run what you run, whatever you want. One gun, one carbine, one pistol. There's the Operator, which was rifle rated plates. So some guys I know had super lightweight rifle plates. Versus like tactical games, you have to have just a certain weight on the carrier. For this match, it was nope, doesn't matter what you have as long as it can it's actual armor. And then there's the tier 1 craziness for 45-pound ruck on top of everything else.
I think that's what you did, right, Mike? Because you're crazy.
Yeah, I did the tier 1. Our friend John Stoner convinced me to do that this year, and I ran pretty much the identical kit that I test ran at the Guardian run this year. So the only difference is I moved from an 11.5 with a suppressor back to my 16-inch running gun, and then I could use the rifle scabbard that's built into the pack that I run, and that worked out really well. But for those that listen to our podcast before, I've kind of gone over some of my kit, so it was pretty much my normal setup.
And I guess I should have said I ran Operator, so I did run some heavy rifle, like level 4 rifle rated plates, so they were not nearly as advantageous as some of the people with like poly plates and stuff like that. But I did the 5K. I wimped out in the 5K, so it really wasn't that bad. But I run something similar to, I have the plate carrier, but I've got a real small RDR gear chest rig on that. And then actually my wife sewed me up a real small water bladder that velcros to the back, so my slickster. So because same thing, I actually like to have more water than maybe I think I'll need out there, because I'd rather carry that extra weight than start zoning out because I'm dehydrated.
Yeah, well, it's not always, depending on your run time, you may be able to, your actual on-court shooting or running time may not be that long, but if you hit, a couple stages where a couple runners are stacking up, you may be out there twice as long as you expect. And if it's 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that water might come in handy.
Yeah, this is my second Legion, and both years I've been late in the day and I've gotten 0 wait time. It has been
That's awesome.
Cooking. Every once in a while it's nice to show up to a stage and get a 2-minute break, but it worked out. I put in a decent run. I wasn't much behind my time last year, and I was running light fighter last year. So, all right. So the course, we can start going through it. It's rolly hills. It's Tennessee. It's no real crazy hills. I don't think. Was there anything crazy on the 10K that I didn't get to do?
Mike, if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, so the 10K this year, they've got something called a never-ending forest, or the forest that sucks out your soul. I think Nick Hansen calls it that. And so this year was interesting for me because I almost stepped on a snake, and luckily for me, it was a black rat snake. But that was an unintended obstacle. The 10K had a swamp that we had to slog through depending on how your Arabic was, as well as some Kim's games. And then we also had an extra special culvert that was considerably smaller than the 5K culvert, and presented quite a challenge to try to move a ruck through.
I think I saw 24-inch diameter was what that culvert was, which is pretty tight.
Yeah. A lot of, so the divergence, there's a big open field. We had to crawl under a barbed wire fence. Last year, actually, somebody lost a gun there. I was unloaded, but there's a Glock 19 waiting for somebody to come back and get it. A lot of extra little fun stuff. A lot of, I would say, the first part of the course. Now, the 10K. I've only done the 10K. There's a little bit that I don't get to see, but for the most part, it follows the woods minus kind of that section between stage 2, stage 3, where you're kind of cutting through the woods. There's like a lot of that, but worse. That's the majority of the 10K. And then before that final culvert, that 24-inch one, we had, I don't know, what'd you say, Mike? Like quarter mile, half, not quite a half mile, maybe at least a quarter mile. Not crossing a creek, but actually going through the creek, like following the creek. Like you go down into it and just tromping through that as fast as, really it's not fast, it's just slow. Just getting through that. And then the swamp was pretty mucky. It was like chest deep. It wasn't terrible in the sense of it wasn't swampy as in disgusting. Like it was mucky, but it wasn't like algae on the water nasty. But what I noticed is it just sucked the energy right out of you. Just walking both in the muck and then the amount of water resistance with all your stuff, and you're trying to hold a rifle up or anything else out of the water. So a lot of extra on the brief on the 10K morning. Matt's like, yep, the 5K is hard. The 10K sucks. That's pretty much the message.
Yeah, he definitely delivered on that. And the terrain down there's really neat. Even with the 5K, like Sean said, you're cutting through some woods. You're kind of, and even the woods section, when we say woods, there's not a trail there. There's just tape hanging from the trees every so often. So you're getting cut up by, spiky plants, and you're tripping over logs. And to start off with, you kind of go down some path. You cross over a little creek. I kind of stayed dry there because I'm one that I'll stay dry until I can't stay dry. But then you don't get very far, and there's just a little sign that says "Go under," and there's I think it was a 32-inch manhole underneath the road, and it's got water. There's water going through it, so you get in knee deep in the water there, and you crawl through that pipe, and then there's a pretty steep hill on the other side of that. I think is that where your match kind of started to go downhill, Sean?
So mine actually went downhill before I even started. So side backstory, you two both took the class. So for Legion this year, because it is a fundraiser for the Special Forces Association, did a 2 one-day classes, Friday and Saturday. Part of that was preparation for the match, is one of the many, many things we talked about. So before the match even started, all kitted up, I was kind of BSing and, catching up with other guys. And I realized, I actually take off in like 15 minutes. So throwing everything on, had everything in hand, but like put something down, to pull my carbine out. and then run to the start line and get checked in. Well, about 15 seconds before I was supposed to start, I'm literally holding my arm up with my hand on the start because I keep track of my time. And I kind of look at my arm like, I don't have my arm board. So I like to bring an arm board to, as you mentioned, record data, things like that. Of all matches, I can generally get through without it. If I didn't, this was one match that's really pretty good idea to have. So, like, I'm out of time, aren't I? Or I was like, time starts now. Oh, so I actually ran back to the truck and then back to the start line. So I burned a nice minute and a little sprint to, a couple 100-yard sprint as it started for me. So I figured, okay, nothing I can't recover from. But that first culvert, so when I went to go into the water to go down the water to go into the culvert, that bank that was right there, I kind of planted my left foot to put my right foot down in the water, and that bank gave way on my left foot. So it was like full cartoon, both feet in the air, right smack into the water, kind of right on the edge of the water, right my kind of right butt cheek, and then my holster went right down into the muck and the mud. And then I actually went all the way carbine. I mean, I was up to my neck in the water, like just like I said, full cartoon into it. And then when we get to the stages, I can talk about all the issues that came out of that. But that was how mine started. Like, this is already off to a great start. So before stage one.
Yeah, it's hard to sometimes explain because you don't want to exaggerate, but like where we're going, there definitely a lot of this stuff. There's not like what you would think trails. Like there's just a sign go down. So yeah, banks giving way. I coming up out of that, I fell and then I got not very far and tripped over something else and muzzle of my gun went into the mud. I mean, I run a 3-port brake, which we've talked about before on the show, is really kind of advantageous in run and gun because they're way easier to clean out and less danger of something happening than like a bird cage or something like that. But yeah, so I'm picking dirt out of that, and so yeah, we'll kind of, I guess, walk through the course. So you get through that, you get back on like a little cart path, and you head into what's all their bays. A lot of pistol bays. They've got a long range, but you head to one of the pistol bays, and you start off by dragging a dummy. So 150-pound dummy or something like that, and then you head into this small little building. What, 4x4 maybe, or 3x3, something like that.
It was probably like 3 feet wide, maybe 5 feet long. It was kind of,
Yeah.
I think the engagement was a car ambush or something like that was what it was actually based off of. So you were down in a very enclosed space, and it was out of plywood with small ports.
Like on the ground,
Yeah,
you're
like
getting down on the ground.
Like there's 1 or 2 on each side at ground level, then kind of like you couldn't kneel, so it's kind of like a rice paddy prone, like squatting, weird low squat. And then there are targets on both sides.
Yeah. Now, depending on when you ran and what you did, Mike, do you want to discuss the fun that you had here? Because your stage was a little more exciting than most people's.
So the 5K runners got a flashbang tossed in or around the box with them. The 10K,
and I think they also did artillery or simulated artillery instead of a flashbang. So
yeah, they had a mix of pyro, but nonetheless there was an explosion close by. It did be disorienting.
Yeah, and then the 10K got smoke. So the SF guys brought smoke with them, and they had a little box on the side, and they had like heavy movers blankets on the end. So when you were dragging the dummy, one of the ROs would pop smoke, throw it in that little box, and it was separated from the main compartment by what looked like chicken wire, and then the box would fill up, and you had to go in there and shoot with a box full of smoke. And by the time I went through on RO day, I guess that there had been a fair amount of smoke through, and the actual wooden box and blankets caught fire with me in it. I went in and engaged through the 6x6 ports on the left side, and I just remember thinking, like, man, it feels kind of warm back beside me. And so I turn and look because I have to get hits off that side, and there's like these 12 and 18-inch flames. And so one of the ports is directly over these flames. So I'm shooting pistol and like spread my arms really wide, trying to keep my forearms from getting burned. And I was thinking, as I was shooting, and I was getting hits even through the smoke, and I was thinking, this just doesn't seem right. But it's Legion, and you roll with it. It doesn't matter what happens, what comes at you, you roll with it. And so I was able to kind of push the heat to the back of my mind and move forward, finish the stage. I guess when I exited the box to complete the shooting portion, the ROs were getting ready to call me out because the flames. I'd moved to the other end of the box by then, but the flames were considerably large and starting to come out of the box. And I'm not sure how they extinguished them, but they said that the only reason that they let me shoot through was they knew that I had a limited amount of ammo with me, and they knew that I might not be able to afford to reshoot the stage, and that could definitely affect my match outcome. But that was the literal moment when I burned down a stage, so to speak. But yeah, it was a very unique stage. It's one of those that really emphasizes why Legion is different than other matches in terms of the level of difficulty, the things that are thrown in there for the shooters to deal with.
And this isn't like airsoft smoke, like this
These are
is
real smoke grenades, like
these are these are the good ones. Now, Sean, so you've just got completely covered in mud and water, and I'm gonna guess that stage went awesome for you and your guns ran perfect.
Yeah, I was a little heated after that one. There is actually video of it. So I'm going to do a full written on my, I'm calling it dealing with the dumpster fire, because there's actually a lot of lessons learned. But so yeah, so you go into this port, pull the gun out. It was pretty orange. It's normally a black gun. It's pretty orange. So scrape mud off, go to shoot first target. So through these ports, you have to remember there's 5 per side. So you shoot from inside the box, 1 hit each. You can't see them all from the ports, so you got to kind of like remember where you're at. And then you go out to the back side and you shoot them all again, but from the front of the box. So first shot, bang, hit, and then dead trigger. So I'm like, okay, well, what's a dead trigger? Usually you figure, okay, it's full of mud. Like, what's running through my head? Okay, failed to feed issue or some kind, or maybe there's gunk. Tap racket, shoots again, dead trigger though. So, okay, tap racket, and kind of get, I don't know, 5 or 6 into it, and then a dead trigger again. Like even after a tap racket and dead trigger, like this isn't good. So tap racket again, and just I'm like shooting literally at that point. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna cycle the slide every time. I didn't know what was going on, but I didn't want to DNF the stage.
Yeah, it's a bolt gun at this point.
Yeah, so basically take a shot, bang, tap, bang. Go to do a reload. As I get out, it's like at that point, so 10 rounds from inside the box. I think I probably fired 1 or 2 extras. So I had 22, I think, when I started on that one. So I was like, okay, I know I'm running low on ammo not because I wasn't getting hits, because I was ejecting around every time I fired a round. So the gun was feeding. I hadn't quite put that together yet. Get out of the box, do a reload, and then have to do the same thing. Cycle. So once that stage was over, nobody was standing there quite yet. So luckily, I asked the artist, hey, obviously my gun's kind of jacked up. Can I look at it for a minute? And they're like, oh yeah, no problem. So clear it out and spitting water in it, like just trying to hose it off, cycling it, dry firing it. It was not resetting. So it was cycling fine. Like there's no debris on the barrel that I could see. So spit some water, literally lock slide back, getting water down in there, and taking my finger, kind of coming up through the bottom. So I'm shooting a 2011. I get a small leaf out. I get a bunch of mud out on my fingers. I'm just kind of like wiping it out. Dry fired a little, like I say, this taking longer to explain it than what I actually did. But cycle dry. Like, okay, at least with dry fire, it's working. Stoke it back up, off to stage 2. Just kind of like it's not. a total disaster. It's only the first stage, right? So take off to stage 2. As I go out, obviously I have kicked out a mag's worth of ammo and shot about a mag's worth of ammo. But going back to round count, Legion's a match where you don't skimp. So I brought twice the round count advertised plus an extra mag. So in my mind, I do that thinking if I lose a mag on the course, something comes out of a belt, climbing an obstacle, on a stage, go do like a speed reload, and the mag just disappears in a puddle, wherever. I basically, with the last name of Murphy, expect I'm going to lose a mag. So in that case, like, okay, I just burned through that emergency magazine in my mind. I'm still okay. So while I'm doing that, I start to finally assess, okay, maybe my gear is a little worse than I thought. Figured I went in the water, got some mud on it, but again, I was crawling in the water too. So maybe it may have been okay. As I am going down the path or the road, which should have turned into a path, I stayed on the road as I'm kind of like downloading a mag, trying to pull I keep a couple paper towels in a Ziploc, trying to dry some rounds off, figure out the mag situation. And I kind of like, as soon as I finish addressing the pistol mags, one was like a look up, like, I don't see any signs. I don't see any flags. So it's kind of like, and it is an active shooting range, right? So like, okay, let's freeze. I'm still on the road, so I know they're not going to have any rounds crossing the road. So kind of look around, like, okay, there's a flag over the hill over there. Like I see it like peeking above the hill. So like, clearly I'm not where I'm supposed to be. So I walk a little bit further just to make sure I didn't miss a sign. Or like it was right at the hump where I know the road split, which was the course last year. But that was not the course this year. So take a second, pull my phone out, which had the course map on it. Like, okay, I'm definitely not where I'm supposed to be. So I backtrack and then get to stage 2. But that nice little side adventure cost me like 0.6 of a mile and, nice 8 minutes, 9 minutes extra. So that's stage 1 plus.
Yeah, and that all adds up. And I'll say before somebody, because you say 2011 and people are like, oh well, these a lot of Glocks out there got wet and did not run this summer. We've seen quite a few guns that just when you get them wet and muddy, it doesn't really matter what make or model you have. They all have a good chance of failing.
Yeah.
So
so the second running gun I ever did was a Carolina one a long time ago, or say a long time ago, back in 2018. There was a river crossing, and then you had to do a barbed wire crawl through basically a bunch of muck. The exact same, Safariland ALS, which I love those holsters. Still, just the way you had to crawl, you just like basically your gun was a scoop for the mud. And what happened then, same thing happened now. Happened with a Glock to me, happened with a 2011 to me. And the short version, which there's some more problems coming up, but there was a little bit of debris. The gun was actually, there's nothing inhibiting the function of the gun. The gun actually cycled, like it fed the rounds 100%. Like I had 0 feeding issues, ejection issues, extraction issues, the whole match. Like gun ran beautifully. What was happening was there was enough debris in there that there was not enough oomph behind the trigger on reset. So that debris, or basically it was fine silt. Like I completely disassembled the gun after the match. There's enough little bit of debris that was providing resistance for that trigger to reset. Same thing happened on my Glock where that trigger hinges through the frame, because on the Glock, the same thing had happened. Basically, there was enough resistance that you could pull the trigger forward and it would reset. There was nothing blocking the reset action. It just wasn't enough force to do it on its own. So we'll talk more about particularly stage 5 when we get to it.
Yeah, and that's a common thing. When guns get crap in them, they may not run. So if you don't think that, come shoot a running gun and drag your guns through mud, and you'll find what works and doesn't work, and you'll probably find you do enough of them that they all shit the bed.
Yeah.
All right. So So we've gone on. We're hitting on stage 2. This one, I believe you're fighting in like a city. So they had, I ended up ordering some of these after the match. The stage had some of these little, I think I got 2 inches. I think they were using the 3-inch ones. I'm going to use these in my 3-gun match. So I like to be a dick, and I got the smaller ones. But they had them at 15 yards, 20 yards. So anyone that shot a gun with a scope on it or even iron sights, you're running into height over bore. So you've got to aim a good deal over top of the target to make hits on them. And I think they had four of them from each position. So and there was some, I don't know that you didn't mandate weak side, but there was a couple of them around walls that you pretty much had to go to weak, set up. You pretty well had to go to weak side shoulder to get those.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 5 targets, 4 positions. So, kind of you ran up, loaded your carbine on the clock, shot them, and then just kind of worked your way around the walls. I ended up not going weak hand, but rolled the gun. And at that point, just height over bore at that close. So I actually had a decent run on that stage, but right at the end, because I'd fired a few extra rounds, tried to do a speed reload. At that point, because I got lost, I had not gone through and checked my rifle mags. I was like dealing with that. As soon as I figured I was lost right on the path, stage 2 was right there. So when I went to do a reload, I reloaded off my belt. Well, on the magazine, so you have on most magazines, I got it right here at my feet. So what had happened was this little taper right here for where it locks into the mag well. Because of where it was at my belt pouch, mud had accumulated on both magazines on my belt, to the point was there was so much when I went to do a reload, the mud wouldn't compress and get out of the way. So I couldn't tried pushing, pulling in, magazine wasn't going in. So I fumbled the reload probably 5-6 seconds or more, fumbling with that reload. Still had a decent time on that run. But that's when it really oh crap, wasn't panicking or giving up, but just there's more issues that I still have to figure out. So now I'm, already, forgot stuff at the start line, already had a disaster crawling, going in the mud unexpectedly. Stage 1 was an epic failure. I already got lost, and I just had some mag reload issues. So at that point, that was probably the lowest I was feeling on the course. Okay, let's just take this slow. I'm not going to run from it. I'm just going to walk and kind of go through and start sorting out and trying to diagnose what I had going on.
Yeah.
How about you?
I kind of had a dirt moment, and it definitely is one of those where I didn't follow my own advice. I mentioned on here that your stage brief is normally on your runtime, so get good positive clarification. And so in the stage brief, when the RO laid out what the targets were, I thought it was a target from each position from the way that I was briefed. And I did not take my normal time to clarify because I thought it was, that's obvious. I see the boxes. I see that it looks like you can only hit certain targets from certain boxes. And so I went in and I got my hits real quick on that first one and then started to backpedal. And I turned to look to make sure that, the RO wasn't going to be in the way. And the RO, the look on his face was, "What are you doing?" And at that point, it pays to, ask what. And they're like, 5 hits from each box. And I was like, so I had to reverse 6 feet back into the box, get back on, finish that. And then as I was heading to the next box, the RO was like, "I am so sorry." And I don't know if I got a bad brief or if I didn't get it. The ROs are super, super nice at events like this. So it's probably me, and I'll just say that. And again, always double check that stage brief. Ask for that clarification on your runtime, because that height over bore should have been one of the fastest stages for me, just because how much height over bore work we do at our local shooting club. And that getting back in position and then pulling back out and moving to the next position, that definitely knocked down my standing. So again, folks, clarify that stage brief while you're on your run time. You can make up that run time, but you will not make up that shoot time.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, I think we've said it. Whatever they explain to you, explain it back in your own words. Okay, so I'm shooting these 5 targets from here, and then I'm moving to here, and I'm shooting, and then on, and they'll say yes, or they'll say no, and they'll re-explain it. So yeah, that's a good advice. And the thing with this match is there was no, I think it's a very well designed match. There was no impossible shots. but there was a lot of targets that were really easy to burn up ammo. I mean, if you did not respect those little hangers, you were going to burn up ammo. I burn up more than I should have just because I was using the EOTech Voodoo, and the reticle at 1x is just really fine, being first focal plane. And I thought I could see it well enough, and I just didn't have enough contrast, so it was hard to hold. Usually I would have gone up to like 1.5 or 2, just enough to get the reticle a little bit bigger. And so I couldn't see my reticle to where I was holding off, and you get shooting and you just kind of, I'll figure it out. But yeah, you can burn through a lot of rounds that way.
Yeah, I ended up shooting like 2.5 power myself, but yeah.
Yeah, that's normally what I would have done.
And I had a couple people after the match that specifically were asking about, okay, for your height over bore, what hold in your scope did you use for those close range shots? And I honestly could not tell you, I'm not using my 300 or my 400 yard hold mark. I've shot the height over bore stuff enough that my mind recognizes the target diameter for the distance that I'm at, and then I'm holding my main crosshair appropriately over. If you're trying to search for, especially a first focal plane scope, if you're running it at 1 or 2x for a particular hold to try to engage that close range target, you're going to burn up way too much time. Get used to how things are proportioned in your scope when you're looking at them.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, in Sean's class, anyone who took that class, we did a fair amount of height over bore shooting. And as Mike mentioned, I run our local 3-gun match. I like to put clays on top of a no shoot at like 7 to 20 yards. And with that, if you do not hold over top of the target, like literally your reticle has to be off the clay, you are going to hit that no shoot almost every single time. Depending where you're zeroed, but for most people, you're going to nail that no shoot.
Yeah. No, it's definitely at distance you have to go with a reticle or a dial, your actual hold amount. But yeah, at that close range, it's a target reference or a target hold, feature hold, not necessarily like, oh, it's exactly 20 mils or something like that. Sometimes in some situations it works, but when you just show up on a stage like that and you don't really know the target size and the distance was changing as you're kind of moving in and out of walls. So yeah, in that case, it's like really like a little bit off the edge, the top edge, like above whatever reference the gun was pointed, will get you through that. And for those that don't know what height over bore is, basically where the scope's looking and where the barrel's looking at close range, the scope and barrel where the bullet's traveling have not converged yet. So you got to account for that. And that's what we're talking about if you've never seen that. And if you're not sure, go shoot it. Go shoot close range targets. Aim at something and look where the bullet goes, and you'll figure out exactly what you need to hold.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd say especially this, like you knew that you were going to have a bunch of it. So if you don't know, pay attention on that first shot. Don't just, I saw some people on the stage that I was ROing that was further in the match, just ripping shots off. And I guarantee you they didn't know where they were hitting. So those first couple shots, see what you need to see. And once you say, okay, I'm this far over and I got a solid hit and saw that thing move, do that hold every time. There's kind of some advice I heard, never miss the same way twice. So if you miss, do something different. Just ripping shots off. I saw a lot of people just ripping shots off at it, and I knew you could tell they're not trying to change anything. It's just accuracy by volume, which is Legion is not a match for accuracy by volume.
Yeah. And as a sport, run and gun, when you're carrying all your ammo, I've seen, as you guys have all seen, people run out of ammo by the end of the match. Nothing worse than running the whole way or making it all the way to the end and sort of to the last stage and like, oh, I can't shoot this. I'm out of ammo.
We saw quite a few people in the 10K at stage 6. They ran out of rifle and they're headed to stage 7, and it's a rifle pistol stage. So I'm normally in 3-gun, I'm a little more accuracy by volume because you kind of can be, the sport's a little more set up. And run and gun, I'm a lot slower. I'm still working on getting my speed in that, but I'm much more calculated, and because of that, because you just don't want to be burning ammo. All right, so we head on through the woods some more. After we've already gone through the woods with where you're kind of searching. Stage 3. One of you guys is gonna have to refresh my memory because I'm trying to remember.
So
Is
that
that
was
the Jeep stage? No.
no. So did you, Mike? You want to go? Is he there?
Yeah. So sorry, volume. So stage 3 was a barbed wire crawl beginning. If you recognized a feature that was out on the course, our favorite little gnome that Legion vets will know very personally was out there with some important information for us. And depending on if you got it right or not, you would start the stage with a barbed wire crawl. Then once you got there, they had you shooting close range paper with a rifle, and you were essentially giving yourself cover to get to a position to engage steel at 80 yards. I believe that the paper target was fairly close. I want to say only maybe 45, 50 feet, and it was an AC zone was the only acceptable. So you would get your hits as you were moving. I think you repeated that. What was that, 4 times? 3 or 4 times. And so it was one of those where you needed to know how fast could you move and shoot, and then quickly, yep, there's the gnome. So and then quickly get a hit. So for me, that was a chance for me to use my offset red dot, and I used my donut of death and just put it in A zone, got my hits there, and then could run my primary optic at like 2.5 power for a good magnification to pick up that target against the tree line. And probably not my fastest stage, but I managed to move through that without any issues. How did that go for you, Sean?
Yeah. So start out. You load the rifle on the clock, and so yeah, you move. All the close range had to be shot while moving. So I went ahead. When it's something like that where you have to shoot moving, I'm always going to give it an extra insurance round. All of my shots felt good, so I shot running 1 to 8, running like 2.5 power. At that distance, there was a big brown blob. I kind of like as I came in, kind of like centered up on that brown blob, hammered 4 rounds, and then you, while you're moving, you're actually moving to a shooting position, which was a barrel, and you had to shoot a steel plate at 75, 100, 125 yards, somewhere in there, from behind cover. I took the more Legion approach behind cover and actually kind of got behind it, didn't support off the barrel. So I think I took 2-3 shots for every, on that one steel plate. So you'd shoot the moving target, which was a close paper. You had to have 3 hits in the C zone or A zone, shoot the steel plate, and then you repeated that, I think, 2 or 3 times, three positions worth. That actually worked out well for me. I fed off the chest rig with a clean mag, so I went into it with a good, clean rifle, clean plan, and I actually had a pretty good stage on that one, top 5 run on that one. And then they had a machine gun simulator going off as well. So once the stage started, they had a machine gun simulator behind you, pa 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 while you're shooting as well. So that was fun.
Yeah, see, sadly on RO day, I think by the time I got there, that wasn't working. So,
yeah.
When you RO, sometimes you get lucky, and then some, weather-wise. I mean, I think we had a better day weather-wise. It was a little bit cooler, but it was a pretty perfect weekend, really, the whole weekend.
Yeah,
but
we won the weather lottery there.
Yeah, but as far as like all the things working, yeah, sometimes that doesn't happen. So it's kind of, maybe it's an advantage. Usually shooting with RO day is not an advantage. I had 4 or 5 miles under my feet of ROing before I started. Like, Sean had 10 miles every day 2 days before he shot. So that,
18, I think it was 17 or 18,000 steps a day.
yeah.
Up and down, up and down.
Yeah. That can't be discounted. All right, so yeah, after that, more through the woods. I think, is that where you came on the Arabic writing? Right? Is that right before the creek crossing between?
I think there was one Arabic at that point.
Yeah.
A little creek cross, some hill climb. I think you kind of work your way up in elevation a little bit as well.
And then you get to a Jeep ambush. I think the Jeep, they had a Jeep Wrangler or Cherokee that you started inside. And it's like, I think it gets hit by an IED, and then you're going and you're doing your thing. So that one you had four positions, I think. And they were just like, think of like a wall like you'd use in USPSA, and then sandbags underneath it. And then now I'm trying to remember again. There was like four plates, and I think that one or two of them were like skinny Sammys, like the auto resetters, and then a couple of them were a little bit bigger. And you could go left to right or right to left, didn't matter. But you had to go to one end, shoot your way across, and then I think after that you ran back to the Jeep. You had to pull a rescue Randy out of the back, move him behind cover, and then go up and put a shot on a plate, like a full-size silhouette at 50 yards, which usually works well for me. It took me 3 or 4 shots, which I thought was odd at the time, and I was like, you're tired, you're blood. And what it turned out at this point in the match, one of the screws on my red dot had completely fallen off, and the other one was loose. So basically the red dot on my pistol was flopping all around. So I'm guessing that's not advantageous to making 50-yard shots if I had to take a guess. Now, for me, I think the hardest part of the whole match is at the end of this, off the shoot clock, you have to grab that rescue Randy, and then you have to put him back into the Jeep. And I think someone said it was like 165. I mean, it weighed basically the same.
Full adult male.
It weighed as much as me. So I didn't know that I was going to get it back in.
Yeah,
I mean, it was heavy.
It was definitely kind of like I was tired. You're running. There's a lot of movement on that stage, and it was kind of like, okay, kind of like sit them up, get the arms right, kind of grab them. And I remember sitting there kind of squatting, thinking, okay, let's be strong, and then try and get him in the back of the Jeep.
Yeah, it took me one or two.
It was not pretty.
It probably looked a little X-rated at times. I'm like, got my hips thrusting, trying to push this guy up in the back. I forgot to say the sandbags, which I thought this was for, I thought it was kind of neat that the sandbags were set up in a way there wasn't a great, I don't think you could necessarily just go prone.
Yeah, so no, there was tall grass in front of the seating positions. Yeah,
I happened to pick my 40-round PMag. That's what I grabbed out, and ended up working out on almost every one of those. I could set the PMag on the sandbag, and kind of that got me at the right height. But it was you could easily burn some shots because none of the shooting was in like an ideal situation. You couldn't kneel, you couldn't just do what you'd normally do.
Yeah, my run on that stage, I had some serious rifle malfunctions. I still really don't know what happened, but get in that first position, load the mag, take the first shot, take the second shot, like the third round, like a dead trigger. And on an AR, you shoot them enough, you can feel when like that didn't go all the way in battery. So I thought maybe it had short stroked or failed to eject. So tap racket, right? First remedial action there. And what actually happened was it did feed a fresh round, but the bolt didn't go all the way forward. So because it didn't go all the way forward, when I cycled it, fresh round still in the chamber, feed a second round. So now I have a double feed. So now I have to pull the mag, pull it back, drop it out. I ended up having to do that 10 to 12 times on that stage. I still don't know what it was. After that stage, coming off of it, I basically found the cleanest mag I had and just kept topping that mag off, cleaned the ammo off. I think some debris got in there or something. It was giving me fits, but I was ready to about throw all my mags in the woods and just find the next runner and steal his rifle ammo. That was my plan. But eventually it's like, okay, that's not going to work. So went to, like I said, trying to really, okay, let's go back and clean it out. I remember spitting on the bolt carrier group because it'd been in the water. It was kind of getting dry and dirty. It's like, put something in there. And actually, the rifle ran fine the rest of the match. So that's what I don't know what happened, or maybe one of the many other water immersions that we went through cleaned whatever was in there out of it. But yeah, I had a lot of rifle problems on that. But my 50-yard hit, because I was so angry, he's like, I'm not going to miss this one, and made that shot. So.
Well, I think that we've seen Fire Clean and Frog Lube and all these others, and now we've got Murphy Lube, apparently. We're going to start bottling and selling his spit.
Yeah, no.
When in doubt, spit on it. I mean,
yeah. Well, I had nothing else, and we've talked about it. I never, Mike. We distinctly talked about it. I've never really needed to carry lube. Going in the bag. Usually run that Lucas EWL, runs great. Going back to prepping for the match. Again, we talked about this at the class. In reflection, I can't remember putting more lube on the carbine after the 2 days of class. Like, it was pretty well lubed, but that immersion in the water several times and shooting dirty ammo, it was getting a little dry. I don't think that was necessarily an issue. I think there was some kind of mud or muck got in there and was slowing that carrier a little bit, particularly because the shooting position was weird. I think when I had my shoulder in it, it was fine because the spring had something to resist against. But when it was kind of that weird kind of over the sandbag shooting down, maybe that was causing. Like I said, I still don't know what happened. I don't have any video of it, so I don't know. I just remember telling Bruce something about a very not nice word rifle. So.
Yeah.
Well,
so Lucas makes the little, looks like almost a ketchup packet or whatever, samples, and you can find them. And that's what I tuck in the front of my chest rig. So, like, even worst case emergency, if I look in it, it's probably a lube issue on a stage, I can pull that out, rip it open, and dump it on a gun. And I might be able to finish the stage without timing out. I know my rifle was getting pretty dry at the end of the class. But the way that I do is I'll lube it up really well. I'll do a shooting session pre-match normally, and then I won't pull the gun apart. I'll just drop lube in the bearing surfaces and then run it. And then there's no chance of me reassembling it and causing issues. I also had an interesting double feed. I've been playing with the A5 buffer system and some LMT, the Ambi lowers, the Mars. And so when I went to charge that 16-inch rifle, it's got a JP captured spring, and it feels very different. And I felt it, and I was like, that didn't feel right. And so I went to pull the bolt back just far enough that I could see, but of course you're running to a shooting position. And so I got it too far back, picked up another round, induced a double feed. And so I just got that mag stripped out, and as I was going to a knee, so I lost probably a second getting that second magazine inserted in, chambered. I shot off the vertical foregrip on my rail on top of the sandbag, and I was looking at grass. I probably should have gone to the magazine for the other positions, but by then I was in the moment, and I really didn't think on my feet with that. But I was able to, as I came up out of that position, grab and retain that magazine I'd stripped out. So if I would have needed it, I still had it. So I probably lost a couple seconds on a stage that I should have had a faster time, but it wasn't a complete dumpster fire. So at Legion, I'll take that.
Yeah, no, this was a great stage. If I walked you up there and showed you the stage and told you what you were going to do, you'd be like, piece of cake. I can go 1 for 1 on all these. You got the run, elevated heart rate from that. You've got kind of weird shooting positions, and I think all three of us are pretty used to that kind of thing. But it's just you drop a shot here, you drop 2 there, you got to clear a malfunction. I mean, you can really burn through ammo in these matches, like a match like Legion, pretty quickly. So it's good stage design. It's interesting. I think that's why we all enjoy it. I mean, I'm probably going to start carrying lube out there. Something I've started carrying is basically a cleaning rod, 2 sections of cleaning rod, because I've been at multiple running guns now where cases got stuck or a bullet got stuck, and having something to clear. I mean, it usually just takes, you drop it in the barrel and the gravity will knock the case out. But if you don't have that, the extractor will keep slipping off. So I had like 2 sections of that, and I just tucked it inside my plate carrier next to my plates, folded up. So not the quickest to get out, but you're probably not going to go on the clock. But if it saves you the rest of the match not having a gun go down, it's definitely worth that.
Yeah. No, that's what's fun too, I think, about running guns, is you get to deal with the problem. It's not, a lot of other competitive events, you start having gun problems, they're sending you home or, pulling you off the line. As long as you're not doing something unsafe, a suspected squib, they're not going to let you keep shooting, but you get to clear it out. It's not a go home, or, you may not get to reshoot the stage. Or you plug a bore, things like that. There's a little more lenient to that real world type application of, hey, you're on this big course, that last stage might suck for you, but you can fix the problem, assuming you brought the stuff to deal with it, or you can adapt on the fly. Whether it is, there's plenty of pictures and videos of people dunking rifles in the water, doing weird stuff to the gun to try and get it to keep working if there's a problem, things like that. Like that adds that element. I think that's what makes it fun. Is it's I like to go and be competitive, but there's plenty of people that they bring just, I wanted to try one of these with my Galil or my Garand or whatever, and problems show up, but you get to learn and you get to work through the problem versus, you had a shitty run, like, go home, thanks, see you later. Like, it's not like that at all, which is, like I said, I like that. Kind of instills that keep fighting through the problem and keep going. Like, that's no charge for realism. This is how it works.
Yeah, that's the fun part of the sport. All these guns work when you take your gun to the indoor range and you put 20 rounds or 50 rounds or 100 rounds down range. All these guns work 100%, for the most part. But you get out there, and I've seen AKs go down and AR-15s and FALs and definitely M14s, but they all I've not actually seen an M14 make it through a match, even a 3-gun match, but I'm gonna get some haters there. But yeah, that's the nature of the game here. So I guess moving on, we get to the 5th stage, which is the last one for the 5K. That's the last one I did. This, you had a Jeep, another Jeep, and you start in the passenger seat, and it was a little different on RO day, I think, than it was on the regular day. But you get out, and you've got like a steel plate, big steel plate, and you're basically just shooting it 5 times from 4 different positions, and then the last position you shot some paper. So pretty quick stay. I mean, you're talking, I think my time was 25 seconds or something like that. It's a quick stage. You're burning down.
There were multiple sub 20-second runs. It was a fast stage. Again, your gear working. Just stepping out, burning 5, and then working the corners of the vehicle. Apparently, a few people did shoot the windshield, and from what I heard, the antenna didn't quite make it on the Jeep. Guys, kind of like not quite far enough around that corner, or being cognizant of, hey, my rounds are actually going to hit a part of the vehicle and not actually hit the target. Going back to the pistol problems, at that point, I'd kind of figured out, okay, the gun's cycling fine. So what did I do? Take a shot, and I actually brought the gun back, pinched the trigger, pulled it forward, come back out, take a shot, pinch it, pull it forward. So I wasn't wasting rounds, at least, but I was actually having to manually reset the gun. So that was, I was 40, 50, I think it was almost 50 seconds on that one. Just take a shot, reset, take a shot, reset. But assuming the gun worked, like, that would have been a really fun stage, because it was definitely a burn it down. Not burn it down Mike Ford style, but burn it down shooting fast style. Well,
I mean, I shot it pretty quick. I still had a pretty fast time on that for the 5K, and I had a red dot that was flopping all around. I mean, it was pretty much like, look at the target and pull the trigger. So, and that kind of thing is, I wouldn't want a whole match of that kind of thing, but every once in a while, get in a stage where you can just like rip fast splits, and that's a pretty good time. I don't know, Mike, did you have any issues with that one, or were you pretty good?
I probably shot it a little bit more conservatively than I should have. I was doing pretty decent on pistol ammo at that time, so I should have shot a little faster, but nothing remarkable or unremarkable. So just another good fun stage, and I think it's we've used that stage for Jimmy Moriarty a couple times, a fallen fifth group guy. So it's always a sobering reminder after meeting his father at some of these events of how personal a lot of these tragedies are.
Yeah. And to add with that, at the Legion event, what's pretty cool, they have multiple Gold Star families, and for those that don't know what that is, Gold Star family is the soldier fell in the line of combat line of duty. So their families actually came out to the event, and there were multiple. Some of them even ran. Some of the kids of one of the fifth group guys that had been killed actually ran the event. They ran the 5K Saturday, liked it so much they came back and actually ran. They basically picked up where the 5 let off and finished the 10K. And that just is super cool. Just in that bringing that community full circle, and the fact that special forces community still looks after the families of the fallen. But on that stage, the fastest time on the 5K and the fastest time on the 10K were awarded a challenge coin for that as well.
Yeah, that was neat. Now it's sobering because like I know at least one or two people, they shot stages that were modeled after how their father died. So it's Matt Stinnett kind of with RO Day, and I think all the days he talks about like these gold stars, like when they're doing whatever they want that day or whatever they're trying to do, like everyone there, ROs, other competitors, like we're moving heaven and earth, try to make a enjoyable time, really give them the full experience to it. And it does it. The shooting community is great for that. So but it's really neat, but it is a sobering match. I mean, it's kind of heavy at times.
Yeah,
so
and having the active fifth group guys there, a lot of them knew these guys too, especially the recent combat action, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan. A lot of these guys knew these guys, worked with them, were on teams together, deployed together. So, it's I don't know anybody that really doesn't get emotional at some point, whether it's tribute in the morning or who the guys are running with, or they hear stories. Like it's it's hard not to get emotional when you hear it, and hear like it's not just what these guys did, it's who they were as a person. And so it's a pretty emotional thing, even if you have zero connection to that community. Just being there and being a part of that, let alone the fact that it's on 9/11 weekend as well. So
yeah, so from this point, the run back with the 5Ks, nothing real memorable. I kicked it in high gear because I knew I was done with shooting, cleared the pistol out. I mean, I was hoofing. That'll come in more important towards the end, but I'll let you guys kind of go because that Legion, as always, has surprises that you're not expecting, and there was definitely one this match. So I'll let you guys kind of take it from there towards. I mean, I know what 6 was because I RO'd, help RO it, but you guys kind of know the course from there.
So I think CCR's Run Through the Jungle is a good soundtrack for the second half of the 5 to 10K. Because you finish there. That was my encounter with Jihadi George, we were talking about earlier, with the paintball gun. As soon as I roll off stage 5, I was hot because I was like, man, I could have burned that down. I knew I could have done well, but I was having gun problems. And then as soon as like where the RO's trucks were parked, as soon as I turn around, he's freaking standing there like, okay. So I always said some not so nice things about jihadis and goats and certain things I can do with them. And like, you know what? Like, just shoot me. Like, it's coming. I didn't even like, just give me one. And took a paintball right in the rear end. I think you could try and run through the woods, run around them, but at that point, I ran on the 3rd day. He was pretty skilled at getting people, so took my lumps, and there was quite a bit of movement from stage 5 to stage 6. Through the woods, uphill, downhill, cross some water, cross some deep water. I crossed water like I think they feinted us. So you're coming down a hill, you see this crossing, and it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go right there. I know I was not the only one because I was following footsteps across, and then I get across the bank, like, where's the flag? Where's the flag? Nope. Okay, let's turn around, look back. Yep, back across the water. It actually went down to the water and then cut left to get to stage 6. So, Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add on your journey to 6.
So I'm pretty sure George must be a fan of the Ass Show because of where he decided to shoot most people. Um, yeah, I walked right by the RO vehicle, and there was no, I mean, unless you were pieing the corner, which you can't shoot the guy with the paintball gun anyways. You know, it was just a perfect ambush, and he just had the classic George smile. The people in the running gun community that's hung out at matches will know, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. But give that guy a paintball gun, and yeah, it changes him.
Yeah,
So,
I saw everyone at 6 that I saw paint on right on their ass. I mean, almost every one of them. Now, saying that, the whole match, I'm like prepared because they said there's going to be someone out there. When you're going through the woods, I'm watching where the tape's going, and then I'm hanging wide. Like I probably added 4 or 5 minutes on my coming around corners. I'm going wide, trying to get the most visual. And maybe for better or worse, running so late on RO day, he had already hung it up. So I'm like going wide. I'm being super cautious, and I could have just sprinted through. You know, there wouldn't have been anyone there. So I didn't get shot, but I definitely ran like someone was after me.
Yeah. Apparently he was roving as well. Like he wasn't in one position. So there's another spot further along. I think Matt said something about being 2 guys roaming around. I never saw the second one, but I saw paintballs on the ground.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm going to take off running. So I remember seeing those paint guns and took off and sprinted for a couple hundred yards, like, because it got into a spot where the trees got real close. It's like, oh, he's right through here. I'm just going to take off.
yeah. So right after I passed George, that's when I put my rifle in the scabbard because I knew I was getting ready to go into the never-ending forest or whatever the people's pet name is for it. And generally, that's where I make up a lot of time. I spent a lot of time running around through the woods as a teenager. So I'm used to moving through the woods, heads up, looking out, you know, normally observing 1 to 2 tape markers beyond the one that I'm physically walking towards. So I made some good time through there, even though on RO day it was not well trampled. There was a couple fern beds, and there was a couple areas where the leaves on the ground were disturbed. And if you were actually doing some real tracking, you could have followed the people. But for trying to move at a run and gun pace, there was not a whole lot of visual tracking you could do off the environment. It was definitely working off the tape. But I remember coming to that corner where you said you crossed the creek, and I'm sure so many people did. And I'm like, I mean, you can cross here, but this is not normally where Matt sends people. And so I did a good look to the left and then saw the stuff up through some brush. It was really easy to miss. It was almost like a hobbit had made this path.
Which Matt is.
Yep. And so then I was able to divert and make sure that I didn't cross the stream unnecessarily as I made my way to 6.
See, you guys are going to have to be careful with the Hobbit jokes because the pipes he makes us go through are just going to get smaller and smaller. So, so when you came to 6, I can describe this one because this is where
to see it. Probably a lot of funny stuff.
Yeah, it was. So you come up, they explain it to you, but there's a box on the ground that has to be diffused, and they tell you that, you open it up and follow the directions. Well, this being Legion, it was really funny because like a handful of people, like they'd go up and they're slowly opening the latch and they're slowly like opening the top, expecting like something to happen because it's Legion. You just don't know. So you open up the box and there's just directions and it tells you got to cut these. It's just wires hanging out. They just, pulling out, and there's a dikes in there, diagonal cutters. So you just have to cut the wires in the order that it tells you. It tells you have to remember that because as you get to a VTAC barricade later, you have to shoot the targets in that order. And I saw some pretty creative. I think probably the quickest, easiest was people just verbally out loud, white, blue, red, yellow, green, white, blue, red, and just whatever the color combination was, just out in their head. I saw some people write it down, which is not a bad idea. Melanie Trumbull, which I thought this was a pretty good idea until it wasn't, she cut the pieces off and stuck them in her mouth. So she had them in order that she was supposed to shoot it, which worked awesome until she literally got her wires crossed. So the last two were in her mouth, but they kind of crossed like that. So she pulled, and what would happen is if you didn't, if you were shooting it out of order, the RO just wouldn't call your hit. So, you could be blasting this target and hitting it, and you're just looking, and it's like, nope, that's not the wrong one. So that's not the right one. So
ammo.
yeah. So I don't know. Did they have an explosion going on there on Sunday? They didn't have anything on.
No,
okay.
They had an audible, like the bomb was about to detonate. So it was, you snipped, and then once you snipped in the correct sequence, the RO had a. It was like a beeper. It's kind of like a loud, like beep, like kind of bombs going off.
Yeah.
So that way you at least knew, and that I think was the start of your time.
Yeah.
Fun thing to mention on the instructions is the wires were color coded because you're going to need that later. But the instructions, the color letters were actually in a color that did not match. So you might be reading yellow and the letters that spelled yellow were purple or something like that. So that was a classic Legion mind trick. Because I deal with numbers and number sequences all day where I work, I just instantly went to, I got to do this out loud because it'll help me say it right, as well as it'll help me remember it. And I was probably not quite yelling at the top of my lungs, but I was probably saying it pretty darn loud as I went through there.
And I saw people writing down those colors. Yellow's purple, blue is, so it didn't end up needing to be written down, but Legion has a lot of that, things just around that you think could be important, and sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. Between the bomb and the VTAC board, I don't think we mentioned this, there's like 5 pistol targets. You got to move through the woods and shoot them. Pretty easy targets. I mean, the difficult thing is that, okay, well, now I've shot some things, and now there's been action between when I cut those, and now I've got a VTAC board. And like I said, there's 5 positions. There was one of these little things, I think another of the 3 inches at like 15 yards. And then there was 2 mini poppers that I think they were close to 125. So got to remember your height over bore, hold over. I saw a lot of ammo being burned because, if these are there, when you hit them, they're actually real cool targets because when you hit them, they really move. But if not, you may see them wiggle as you're hitting the band or you're, hitting the board that it's holding on to. But yeah, there was a lot of people that did not pay attention to that. And then right after that, you got to get back to your regular hold for a 125-yard shot.
Yeah, and then the VTAC board was not just straight up and down. There were some sideways and some curved ones too, which added to the experience. I wrote down
on top of a hill. There was like a little rise that it was sitting on, so it's not sitting super stable. You would think being on a rise would help, and maybe for some people it did, but it really, like most people I saw, it looked pretty inconvenient.
Yeah, I ended up writing down. I wrote down the first letter of each, so defuse the bomb, and then I just, I saw like Y, W, yellow, white, R, red, and wrote those down on my board, and then went to the pistol, had to manually reset on the movement, but then the rifle, took some extra shots, but didn't have any issues there. I think I had one of the best times on that one. That one went well for me because that was get through the pistol and then try not to screw up the rifle, and that was the key to success on that stage. And having written it down, like didn't have to think about it. Y, yellow, there it is, hammer it out, and that worked out for me.
Yeah. Now, Mike, you did well. I don't know what you ended up at on Friday, when I left to do my run, Mike had the fastest time by like almost 20 seconds. I mean, it was, it was a pretty, like 96 seconds or something like that. How did that end up shaking out?
I think the fastest person did it in like high 70s or 80, but I think I still maintained that top 10% pretty easy. But I kept the stage win for RO day, so that's kind of cool. But even at the end of RO day, when I went back to RO so Ryan could go do his run, the amount of brass that was there was completely unproportional to the amount of targets you were engaging. It was insane. And even some of our best shooters I saw come through there, and they died. They absolutely died on that VTAC board. So again, just stuff that if you were off the clock and you were thinking about your hits and you weren't really having to remember a color code, maybe not the biggest challenge in the world, but I was watching people go through magazines on that problem.
I saw just in Friday, I saw at least 2 or 3 people right off the top of my head that burn up every last bit of their ammo, rifle ammo, and then headed to one more stage on the 10K with no ammo, no rifle ammo, which is a sucky feeling because I guess there's a pretty good distance between the last 2 stages. I mean, it's a pretty good trek.
Yep, and you actually had to shoot your rifle on stage 7 too. There were quite a few DNFs on that one. You look at the scores, like that one, 6 and 7 both were. You survived the first 5 stages. We're talking about different. Some were fast, some were kind of accuracy based. 6 and 7, they could suck up a lot of bullets and or a lot of time. So the DNF rate I think was a lot higher on stage 6 and 7. Versus the others. I haven't gone back and looked at kind of what percentage, but based on talking to people and just the complexity of the problem involved, they were not easy.
Yeah, 7 especially sounded like it really ate a lot of lunches, like that, and you're pretty tired by that point, which makes everything. And it's still probably one of the hardest. It sounds like I didn't shoot it. It sounds like one of the harder run and gun stages at most, at a match that I've heard of. I mean, it really was not.
Yeah, so 6 to 7, I don't know, Mike, what was it like? It was over a mile, so a mile and a half maybe. So, but along the way, you cut through more woods, and there was a path you followed, but it wasn't trimmed. It wasn't a path. It was literally, scraping through pine trees, like baby pine trees. Mm-hmm. Crawl under a barbed wire, run through a wide open field, run. Then you get to, it was an obstacle. This is where we're talking about the Arabic phrases. One of the ROs at the stage brief for the day, they said, hey, there will be somebody wearing a Dead Zero hat. Certain couple phrases might have some advantage for you. I totally missed it, like didn't have it. And if you got the phrases right, like a very basic conversation, then you had a question on how many water crossings you had at that point, up to that point. You could bypass the swamp feature. I did not, so went down, took a nice swamp walk. You get out of that, and you immediately have an uphill. Then you run past where the start line's at. You get to see it, kind of running on a road parallel to it, like, oh, I'll eventually get there. And then you go back down this is where that second culvert was at. But to get to the culvert, you drop off the road, and then it was about a quarter mile or so, literally walking in the creek. And it's not like, oh, it's a nice little ankle-deep creek. It was waist-high creek. They didn't I was behind. At that point, I'd caught up to the Gold Star kids and a couple Green Berets, and it was just slow going. It just sucked walking through there. But these guys were running tier 1. I remember giving them a hard time, like, so you mean to tell me you guys are Green Berets? You brought 45 pounds of something in that backpack, and not one of you guys brought a machete? Because, like, there's vines and there's stuff just in your face the whole way. Yeah. Then you come out of that and go through that pipe, that 24-inch pipe, more woods, uphill, and then you get to this, like literally looking up like, oh, we get to climb that, the back side basically to the firing point to their long range. And that's where you get to stage 7.
Yeah. And tier 1 through that little stream was absolutely brutal because that stream is just a drainage ditch that he decided to string caution tape through. So there's vines with thorns. It's kind of like Rosa Flora, but it wasn't. I'm not familiar with what that plant was. And it was strung crossed, and then all the trees that fell across and limbs and stuff that gets blown out when they get lots of rain off their range was wedged and laying across there. So there was a lot of high stepping, going down onto your knees to get under something with the ruck on. And then once you got to that smaller 24-inch pipe, you had to decide if you're going to try to push your ruck through in front of you or drag it. I opted for the drag, and the drag rope wasn't left for me, so I had to get out of the stream, retrieve it, hook my ruck up, and whoever used it before me had just wadded it up, and so I got about 4/5 of the way through the pipe, and the line was knotted, so I couldn't. I was out of line to try to drag it, and you're in a position where you can't really drag and get leverage. So I had to exit the pipe, turn around, go back in head first, and was yanking on it, and then my pack must have just slid out enough while I was crawling through that I couldn't get it to restart in the tube. So I had to run up over across the road, start my pack back into the tube, run back, lean back into the tube, and the whole time Lisa Stennett, bless her heart, is encouraging me and taking pictures and and just like, wow, that really does suck. But I managed to drag it through. But somewhere in that process, I lost my dope card. Um, and so that was a really rough thing for me. So I got everything kind of straightened out and then headed up to the long range rifle. And that hill was probably almost, I don't know, would you say 60 foot, 50, 60 foot of vertical? And it's just fill where they pushed it with a bulldozer. So it's just washed out. Everything's loose. There was a lot of I went up like 4 feet with my ruck on and slid down 2. But I managed to get to the top. No wait time on that stage. Out of all of them, I could have used some wait time. And so 7 was your long range rifle. And what they did was you had a overwatch position that was up another probably 20, 25 foot embankment. And from the top, they had a kind of like a modified hedgehog and targets at 100, 200, 300, 550, and 600 yards. And so you got one round at each distance. And if you missed, you could go down. You would have to slide down that berm, engage a steel torso target with 5 rounds, then run back up and re-engage that distance you just missed. And so every time you missed, you had to go back down that berm. And for the first time, having a vertical foregrip on my rifle really bit me because the way that tank trap was set up. I've been able to use it to monopod off things because I don't use it as a foregrip, but it makes a handy barricade stop. But I could not get the rifle into a decent position with that on there and then a magazine in the mag well. So I was pretty unstable. I ended up doing the run of shame up and down the hill twice to get out to 300 yards. And then at 550, I tossed my phone out on the ground, but trying to look at a little stray lock chart on your phone in the middle of a shooting thing, I misread and I was not able to get the 550 and 600 yard, which that's on me for having a relatively new optic that I'm not familiarize myself completely with the drops. But man, that was a tough stage. I hope the rifle went better for you than it did for me on that.
So yeah, the stage ran up the hill, got in the first position. As I preached many times over in the class that we were at, close enough's not good enough. Like, oh yeah, it's 100 yards. Boom, miss right over the top. Like, son of a, down the hill, shoot the pistol, resetting every time, run back up, hit the 100, go to 200, boom, held center, forgot to hold over, or it broke center, missed right under the bottom of the target. Down the hill, shoot the pistol, run back up, get 200, 300, got it first shot, 550, got it first shot, 600. I gave it a little bit of wind, because just thought there was some, didn't really need it. Missed a little high, a little left eye. So I wrote down on my arm board, what the dope was. But for my gun, like, shoot it a lot. Going back to use the gun that especially at a match like Legion. I mean, 100 it's 0, 200 it's a couple tenths, 300 it's a mil, and then basically from 300 to about 650, I've got a little marker. I didn't explain it in the class. We just didn't get time to talk about really longer range carbine shooting. I've got D-2 written on the top of my target. So even if I don't have my arm board or something happen, that's distance -2. So from like 300, it's a mil. So 300 minus 2. So basically move the decimal place over. 300 minus 2. So 3 minus 2 is 1. Is 1 mil holdover. So 400 yards minus 2 is 2 mils holdover. 350, etc. You can do the math. So I wrote down 4.2, which is what the calculator said. I tried to give it exact. It really only needed about 4. Could have broke a little high. It was not the most stable position in the world. So I missed at 6, ran down the hill, shot it, went back up, hit the 600. So I actually did finish that stage 130-something seconds. At the end of the match, Jimmy Nutt ran around. I think they figured out only 6 or 7 people actually finished that stage, whether it's running out of ammo, actually hitting the targets. It was not easy at all. I don't know that prone would have helped because the grass on top of that berm, there's really, because you're on the peak. So you ran up the berm to get to the stage, then you ran up, and it was actually another berm, that overwatch position. You're on the peak of a berm, and then you had this kind of hedgehog that came through, and you had 2 cross supports. The first 100-yard, I tried to go off one of the supports, get a little taller on it to clear the grass. And it was just not, the board was kind of angled or was pointed straight, but you were kind of shooting cross and down. So you couldn't really rest the gun stable. So you're kind of like balancing on the edge. That's why I went a little bit lower to kind of where the boards kind of intersected and try to wedge the gun in, and just shot through the grass, basically shot through the veg. And you could see the targets. It took a little longer to set it up, but it just really, your body couldn't get really that comfortable. It just, those little things just keep, fiddling with the gun, having to run up and down, getting the pistol shots weren't hard. It was the time it took to run down, do it. If you had to do it multiple times, did you even have the pistol ammo left? So it was there was a lot of time sucks built into that. Luckily I was able to get through it. Even with the pistol, I kicked myself like, oh, did you clean? Yeah, I cleared it. Oh, that's great. But I missed the 100 and 200-yard shots, which, like, I'm an idiot. That was not an easy one. And then basically ran from the long range was right, I won't say right next to, very close to stage 1. So you kind of do this giant loop with the 10K. And luckily, no more water crossings, no anything else. You run from what the long range shooting range is kind of elevated, which you ran up to get to the stage. And you just had a nice gentle slope down the hill. You ran over the tube that you crawled under, so you kind of see if people are running behind you and laugh at them. And then the run uphill to the end, which at any running gun match, whether you have a great day or a horrible day, seeing the end always gives you that, okay, doesn't matter how bad it is, I'm gonna finish this thing out. And so run to the end. And I know, Ryan, you wanted to a little surprise.
Yeah.
At the end,
So if you've done a run and gun, like usually you're kind of conservative. I think most people are conservative with their run. You don't want to hit a stage with your heart rate at max. You want to make sure you got the juice to get through the match. But once that last stage is done or that finish line's in sight, like I think most of us hammer down, you're giving it maximum effort. I mean, I know when I crossed that, my heart rate was like 180, almost 190. I mean, I was hoofing it. So they pull you off, you clear, show them an empty rifle, show them an empty pistol, and then they say, all right, you've got 22 burpees. These are on the clock, so get to them. And like, I was like, do I have to do it in like my plates, or can I take those off? And Matt was right there, and then they're like, well, what do you think, Matt? And he's like, well, have they been doing it in their plates? And they're like, yeah. All right, you're doing it in plates. I'm sure Mike got to, drop his rock, which would have been, but then you had to bust out 20. I did 22 of the ugliest. Well, they started okay. I mean, my first 5 or 6 were looking all right, but I mean, it really, for me, it got to be where like, I'm getting down on my knees, I'm dropping down, I'm pushing myself up, the arms are going up above my head. I mean, I don't know if my feet are leaving the ground, but I mean, just grinding through the ugliest burpees I've ever done. And because you just don't have any more. I mean, you don't have much more in the tank.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
I got 8 or 10. Yeah, I got 8 or 10 in, and it was ugly. And then some of the 5th group guys who I knew, they're giving me crap like, oh, you didn't do a push-up on that one. Oh, you can't get off the ground. Like, let me just get this misery over, because it was I had fun and I hated it at the same time, but it's like, I just want to be done. I just want a cold beer and a shower. And that's all I wanted. But the purpose of the burpees, though, was awareness for the Mission 22, which is recognition of the veteran suicides, which is a very prominent, thing that awareness is great, to find ways to help for. But that was the intent of it. I think it was part just to make it suck, but that was the justification, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I like died on my belly, but like that's not real comfortable because you like got plates on, so I'm kind of like a turtle then I'm like trying to roll over on my back, and like again, like it's just it makes you appreciate people like our soldiers who are over there fighting in these. I mean, I got triple curve, like they're fairly comfortable plates, probably more comfortable than most of the guys overseas have, and it's not 110 degrees like it can be over there. And I mean, it gives you appreciation because it's not comfortable to have those on for a long period of time.
Yep.
Don't give Matt any ideas. He'll find ways to duplicate things.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. So no, it was a tough match. It was a tough match, even if everything worked well. I would say, I mean, there's a great cause behind it, but it's not for the faint of heart. And I know a lot of people practice for a long time for it, and you need to. Like this, there were several people actually. It was their first run and gun ever. It's kind of like, okay, so this is full crazy. Like they're not all this crazy. For sure.
Yeah, heartbreak is pretty close too, but some of that depends on the weather. But I mean, I think a good example, Mike, last year on the long range stage, did you have a stage win in your division on that? Do I remember correctly?
So it was Stoner and then me, and we were within, I think, like 10.
Okay.
And that's why we got 4 soldier bourbon, because normally the long range is something that is a strong suit. I'll pick up a lot of time and make some headway towards the top on the long range stage.
But so Mike's got second place last year in it and doesn't finish the course this year. And he kind of explained that. But when was the last time you DNF'd a stage or didn't in a running gun?
I've not DNF'd a stage at a running gun for a while. I think it's been over a year, maybe a couple years at this point. But Legion is one of them where you go out there and you give your all, but you also know there's a good chance that you and maybe even someone who wins the match might have a DNF stage. So you can't let it get in your head. You have to pick yourself up and carry on, which is, the theme of the match. And, the reason we're there is to recognize the sacrifices of the people that have picked themselves up and they've pieced their units back together and they've gone back overseas again and again for our nation.
Yeah. Well, and I think probably for a lot of people, the appeal to Legion. So if I go to a 3-gun match, unless there's something really crazy happens, it's been a long time since I've gone to like a big 3-gun match and timed out on a stage. And running guns is the same thing. Like generally it may not be the fastest time. I may struggle a little, but I'm finishing the stage and there's not, unless something crazy happened. But Legion's one of those matches where like you can be a super squared away competitor. I mean, how long Sean's been doing this, and like you can still just have a bad, like a really bad, like a challenging stage. And I like that. I mean, I think it's good to be humbled every once in a while and just hit something that it's just like, wow, like I did not do well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was, how do I put it nice? And my wife asked how it went. It was like, it was a lesson in adversity. It was the nice way of not dropping a bunch of not so nice words. Yeah, it was, but also at the event, like I've never been one to quit anyways, but it's one of those, yeah, you just keep going. Like, yeah, it sucks for everyone. Yeah, you got to crawl through the mud. You got to do this. You got to do all these other things. And then, oh yeah, your gun didn't work. Well, a lot of people's guns didn't work. Like, just deal with it, move on, and that's the experience. And this time around, went down, took a mud bath, and it didn't work out for me. Still didn't DNF. The stage 2, I was really came off that. Not knowing the pistol, the mud being pretty bad on my kit. I was like, ugh. This may be a rough go, and but it's like, you know what? We're gonna finish it. I got ammo. I got guns. Haven't exhausted all the options. I'm not hurt, so stuck with it. Didn't DNF any stages. I am disappointed in how it went. I had a 4th place finish, and a lot of people are like, that's great, but for me, obviously, a lot of stuff went wrong, and a lot of issues that I'm not happy with. Happy with the event. Like, I'm not negative at the event at all. Like, I tell anybody and everybody about it. It's absolutely phenomenal. It sells out in minutes. Like it's that highly thought of, and it's hard, and people like that. It's advertised as hard. It's not like you show up and surprise, it's a suck fest. At least they advertise it ahead of time. But overall, the purpose at Legion, even if you want to go and be competitive, go and be competitive. The guys that it's memorializing were competitive people. They're hard chargers. They're go-getters. So go give it your all. But it's also that, reminder, like, you just got to keep going. You don't know what you're going to face, and it could get worse, and probably is going to get worse. But you just got to remind yourself of that as you go through the course. Like, yeah, oh, crap, another thing, more in the mud, or this or that. And but it's hard for everybody. So, but no, it's a great match. It's one that's already on my calendar for next year. Like, it's once I got into running gun, I didn't get, it didn't get in like the next year after I'd heard about it. So I was like, worked it out to be able to make it happen. So it's luckily it's easy to know when it's going to happen next year. It's the weekend of 9/11. So I maybe not your first match. We did have a guy. I don't think he was. He may have been. I think he was there. I can't remember. It all blends together. He showed up and took the class. Never done running gun before. Thought it might be something cool, and Matt was able to squeeze him in. So that was his first experience, and he loved it. But maybe not for the faint of heart or the first time out. But people have done it for the first time, and as long as you don't give up, just go enjoy the ride. Like, embrace and enjoy the suck that it is, because it makes great stories, and the community is what really makes it worthwhile.
Absolutely. And you don't have to be some super squared away adult. There's a father-son duo that's come out, and they've run it for years and years at this point. And I know that young man really looks up to the fifth group guys, and so he's able to go, and they'll take time to talk to him, and he'll be out there and shooting. You'll see the Gold Star families out there shooting stages. Just because it's tough doesn't mean it's not doable.
Well, I mean, Sean's a good example. Like, you hear this dumpster fire of a match, and he stuck with it, and like that's he's still got not the finish that he would have liked and would have had without that, but like that's a good that's most people would be. I'd be really happy with that finish. I think, Mike, you went through some stuff. You ended up 3rd place in Tier 1, correct?
Yeah, I ended
Yeah.
up 3rd place, first time playing Tier 1 there, and considering everything that happened and some of the excitement we had, I'm thrilled with how it went this year. And I said that this year was my last year to do weight, but I don't know. I might be stupid enough to do it again.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll meet in the middle. Like I've done light fighter the last 2 years. With teaching those classes, I thought about doing operator. I might get the plates out and do that next year. Maybe we're gonna all run operator and meet in the middle. Full crazy and add some weight on.
I generally try to find whatever Mike's doing and do a different one. just because I don't want to show him up. I don't.
You don't want to make him feel bad.
Being so much, being more senior to him, that would probably hurt his feelings. So now I may step up to the. I'll step up to the 10K next year. I've been doing the 5K the last 2 years, and I'll.
Yeah.
Well, now last year the 5K was the only one that had openings still. It was like a last minute thing to do it last year, and then this year my knees have been kind of bothering me, and I was like, well, so if your knees are bothering you, you run 15-pound plates, right? You kind of split the difference. You do 5K and you jack your knees up with weight. So yeah, maybe I'll hit the ruck hard and I'll do tier next year.
Yeah, at some point he's going to have to probably put a definition on the plates, because if we play operator again, we're just going to make some lightweight like Lexan that'll stop a 22 because it's rifle rated. It'll stop a 22 rifle, and then you'll be running with like 4 pounds of plate front and rear, and we'll call it good. We'll just go full gamer like some of these other guys the last few years and leave our ceramics at home.
Yeah. So I guess let's just kind of going long. Let's wrap this up. Sean, do you have anything you want to share? Any plugs or shout outs or anything like that?
Man, I'm poor I should. So, I was there, on my own. I do have a small partner taught those classes, have a small training company. Don't really do a ton of classes a year because I have a pretty busy schedule with my day job. But we were able to raise $2,200 for the Special Forces Association. So very happy and proud to write that check. And thank you to everybody that came to the class. So that was fun to be able to do that. Shout out wise, even though had some adversity in the gear, Night Force, who I work for, obviously trust the product. Hornady, Proof Research, and Silencer Co. are all companies that I've worked with on different ways and supported me. So ran their gear, and in that regard, the stuff that I used worked. Just got dealt a bad hand on a few other things, and if you listen to all this and think it's crazy, it absolutely is. But highly encourage you to try it. I know right now running gun is kind of an east to central, like Texas, Oklahoma area, but if you do a match, they'll come. So if you're thinking of running one, run one. And if you're as far as actually match directing, and let me know. I'd be interested in going. And then if you're thinking of trying it, come on out. And if you do run them, bring a buddy. So because the more people doing it, the more matches, the more we get to do this. Because I do it for fun. So even though I get to work in the industry, I really enjoy this stuff. So, and I enjoy the people. So thanks for having me on to talk about it. And hopefully to see, somebody. I love meeting the people, and see you guys in another one.
Yeah, Mike, you got anything you want to close up here with?
Yeah, so first I want to thank my biggest sponsor, my wife, that let me come down to Legion within 10 days of the due date with our second child. So she's the real MVP. Sadly, Ryan and I had to bug out a little bit early due to some contractions that started, but I was blessed to be able to come down and hang out and at least take the class. That was worth its weight in gold. Excellent class. Big shout out to Allen's Arsenal that supported the Legion running gun since the beginning. They're run by former group guys. They support the match. They've donated heavily to prize tables in the past. I've picked up suppressor and rifle receiver sets, all sorts of stuff from them. And I've got an Nalgene bottle for every day of the week. So yeah, huge shout out for their support. I know Spike's Tactical is thrown in every year, and of course Night Force. They've been a big part. There's been a lot of people that have gone above and beyond and to make it happen. Of course, Matt Stennett with the time that he's put in, and his wife Lisa that does the photography for the event, and then I believe it's Lisa Lewis that does the cooking. She takes care of the ROs and makes sure that everyone is fed and squared away so they can be there to serve. And I know that Matt's probably got no issues filling up the RO rosters for Legion, but it never hurts to shoot him a message, and you can go out and help him mark the course, set up stuff. Set a hands to a match director is really important. And even if Matt doesn't need your help, check out the other running guns. They're always looking for ROs, or maybe even your local shooting matches. We definitely need involvement in the shooting sports right now.
Absolutely, and I'll second. If you can take a class from Sean, I highly recommend it. I mean, me and Mike have been around this, a while, so it's not like we're inexperienced, but we still learn a ton. I mean, and it really, taking a class from someone who's a better shooter than you, you really get to see some things different. I'd say even if like you're a close peer, you still are going to learn something. You see people's different way they do things, and yeah, I'd highly recommend that. Obviously, get out to a match. I will say, Mike said we got out there in a hurry. I think it was 2:00 our time. His wife called, and he wakes me up. He's like, and we kind of had this planned. Like, if something happened, he can just take my truck home. I'll get a ride home. Plenty of people from Ohio. But it was 2 a.m. Mike had done the 5K and then done the class all day. By the end of the class, Mike was looking a little rough. He was not at his best. So I thought, I can't send him home by himself. So we packed up, hopped in the car. I drove the 6 hours straight. I mean, we stopped once we started with only 20 miles in the tank because we were going to get gas the next morning. So literally we're driving, my car says 0 miles, and we're trying to find a gas station open at 2 a.m. in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee. So once we filled up, I think
it wouldn't be the first time we've coasted into a gas station
that is at a match. Yes, that is true. But we got gas. I think we stopped twice to pee on the side of the road. Like, we didn't even stop in gas stations. I turned a 6-hour trip into like 5.5. I mean, we had Hammer down. I let Mike sleep a little bit. And we're cranking some funk music, and I do all this for him. And do you think he could do the courtesy of naming his daughter's middle name after me? Like, I think that's a reasonable thing, and I'm not saying it, but he's got time. He can change it. So, yeah, it was a great time. Matches, I mean, go to one. Don't feel like you don't have the experience. Just go to one. So, we'll wrap it up. Thanks again, Sean, for coming on and sharing your match. And it's kind of long here. Thanks for sticking with us, whoever's watched it, and you guys have a great one.